talk it over with A. Scott Bolden, former chairman of the Washington, D.C. Democratic Party, and CNN political commentator Simone Sanders, former spokeswoman for Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. Scott, what do you make of this revelation?
Well, I got to tell you, those excerpts today in the Washington Post were hard for a good Democrat like me to read. Whew! I must say, she unloads. Let me just say this, that I thought that when I got done reading it, I thought that the GOP had gotten to Donna Brazile and she had flipped, and now she's testifying against the Democrats.
Oh, Scott.
It's really difficult to read. I'm sorry. That's my take on it. But I also think this, that it feeds into Donald Trump's narrative, if you will, and you've heard him jump on this. And so I think it's difficult, and I'm really not sure why the timing was. My last thought on the book itself was simply this. This idea of replacing Hillary Clinton simply is unrealistic. The rules don't allow for it, and she never got out of the race. Now, if she had gotten out of the race, it would be a very public process, consulting with senators and congressmen as well as governors. And so I'm not sure she individually could make that change, but she could certainly start the ball. But to really start the ball, Hillary Clinton would have to get out of the race.
And that's true, Simone. DNC officials are saying Brazile did not have any authority to actually do what she says she was thinking. There was no vacancy, but this is sure to stir an awful lot of emotion inside the party. We heard it from Scott, but what do you see as the impact of this?
So, one, I want to be really clear. You know, a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month ago now, all the time seems to run together, Secretary Clinton came out with her book, and so many people were like, why now? Why is she saying this? Why is Hillary coming out? And at the time, I said, look, Secretary Clinton is entitled to tell her story. Much like Secretary Clinton, Donna Brazile is entitled to tell her story. Now, there may be people that do not agree with her story. There are some folks that may have addendums or differences, but Donna Brazile is absolutely entitled to tell her story from her vantage point, and that is what we're going to see from her book. So that's what we've seen from the excerpts. Look,
well, I'm sorry.
You know, look, I mean, this is her vantage point of the story. I think that what's really important now is that Democrats, we have a really frank conversation about what's going on inside of our party, about what has happened and what will happen going forward, and that we are better than we were last year. But we cannot allow this to distract us. Tax reform is something we need to be paying attention to. The repeated attempts to repeal and replace Obamacare, and an abortion ban from Republicans who would ban abortion before women are even able to find out if they're pregnant. These are things we need to be focused on, let alone elections that are happening next Tuesday. So this is a conversation we can absolutely have, but we cannot allow this to divide us and allow us to take our eyes off the ball.
Well, Simone, my only response to that is simply that let's get it all out now. Let's get it out before January, and then, you know, let's have a reconciliation meeting with both sides and really focus on the common opponent, which is Donald Trump and the GOP. But I will tell you this, notwithstanding her right to do the book, Simone, I got to tell you, we're going to hear about this book and these allegations in 2018, 2020, and even I'd say next week in some of the state general elections we have right here next to us in Virginia. And so this is a very dangerous time. These are dangerous words. And now it's just another hurdle I think Dems have to overcome, because the GOP and Donald Trump are going to use it in their narrative to strengthen their narrative against Democrats.
It definitely paints a picture, though, of divisiveness that's happening inside the Democratic Party, not total unity. But Simone, I want to ask you a follow-up question about some of those other allegations or information that came out, according to Brazile, in her book, and what we learned this week, this unethical agreement, she alleges, between Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign and the Democratic National Committee to keep the party afloat financially. I mean, now we're getting more information about that, knowing that this was an agreement signed in August of 2015. It gave some authority to the Clinton camp over spending and other matters in the general election, primarily if she was the nominee, which is standard practice. And it also gave her a role, though, here in helping the DNC choose some officials in communications, research, and technology in the primary season. I think that's what a lot of people are taking note of. Do you think Hillary Clinton owes Bernie Sanders an apology?
Look, what I think is it has been very clear from a lot of folks, from Bernie Sanders' campaign, myself included, that there were lots of people who worked at the Democratic National Committee in 2015 that had their whole hands hands, feet, and fingers on the scale for Secretary Clinton. I'm going to say right now that I do not think the primaries were rigged, because if you know anything about how the primaries are set up, the individual states and the individual states administer the caucuses and the primaries. And if you ask me about the debate schedule, that thing was definitely manufactured so that it did not benefit everybody on the wanting on the Democratic ticket. But what I think is important here is that we now have real revelations. Look, now all the totality of the American people know what many people have known inside the Democratic Party for a while, is that a lot of nefarious things went on in 2016, things that compromised the integrity of the Democratic National Committee. And because of that, we need the committee to commit to transparency going forward, to the party officers being fully involved, to party delegates such as myself, to have full understanding of what is going on the side of the Democratic National Committee, so we do not compromise the integrity of our party or the election process. And I think that's what is needed going forward.
Well, it's an appearance issue. Yeah, it's an appearance issue more than anything. I also think this. I think that Bernie Sanders, if he were a Democrat, the perception was... Hold on.
Okay, Scott.
If he were a Democrat, I think we could have avoided a lot of this stuff. But the integrity of the party, it's an optics and it's an optics issue more than a substance issue, but it certainly needs to be reformed.
Hold on
but we need to get it reformed before 2018.
Anna, let me be really clear. The agreement that the Democratic National Committee entered into with the Clinton campaign in August of 2015 was a bad deal. And whether it was Secretary...
But you were offered the same deal, though.
Be clear.
Were offered the same deal, and he turned it down.
I don't want to litigate the 2016 election, but I want to be clear that NBC and ABC had the agreement that our campaign signed, and it didn't say anything about oversight of staffing or hiring or anything such as that matter. So that is not the same deal, and we need to just kill those talking points where they are.
But Simone, also, I think it's important also to have full transparency that also Bernie Sanders did not raise any money for the DNC.
Exactly.
I don't believe I'm having to break this down for the American people. There's a difference between a joint fundraising agreement and an added addendum that keeps the Democratic Party afloat. These are two separate things that we should not conflate the issues on. Yes, Bernie Sanders signed a joint fundraising agreement with the Democratic National Committee, of which he never raised funds for, because that's not how we raise money. But there is a separate issue of a loan, if you will, the Democratic National Committee being strapped for cash and entering into a loan agreement with someone who was also happened to be a candidate for president. Look, this, regardless of who it was a bad deal for the Democratic National Committee to enter into. It compromised the integrity of the party, and that is why we're having the conversation right now.
I think, guys, we got to leave it there. But I think one thing for certain, we are all learning an awful lot more about how the political process works through the past year's election. Simone Sanders, A. Scott Bolden, thank you both for sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate you coming on. Coming up.